You're looking at the beautiful Persian script for On the Origin of Species. It's the title of a book that didn't just cause a stir, it absolutely shook the world to its foundations. Today, we're diving into its powerful central idea using illustrations from the classic text itself. And here it is, a gorgeous cover for Charles Darwin's masterpiece. When this book dropped back in 1859, it didn't just offer up a new theory. It completely rewrote our place in the entire story of life on Earth. So, yeah, let's get into it. Behind all the controversy, behind all the decades of debate, Darwin's central argument was built on things you could see every day, things that were basically hiding in plain sight. So, what was this simple yet totally world-changing idea? Okay, so to really get Darwin's answer, you first have to appreciate the question he was completely obsessed with. For centuries, the sheer, staggering variety of life on our planet, all the different shapes, sizes, and behaviors, was the great unsolved puzzle of science. Yeah, the famous scientist John Herschel called it that mystery of mysteries. Why are there so many different kinds of creatures? Where did they all come from? And why do they seem so perfectly suited to where they live? This was the grand question Darwin set out to answer. And his journey to that answer didn't start in some exotic, faraway jungle. Nope, it started with something way more familiar to a 19th century Englishman, breeding domesticated animals. Turns out, Darwin was fascinated by pigeons. He spent a ton of time with pigeon breeders and learned this one crucial fact. Every single breed of domestic pigeon, no matter how wild or weird it looked, came from just one single ancestor, the wild rock dove. So how in the world do you get hundreds of different pigeons from just one? Well, through a process he saw with his own eyes. For generations, breeders would look at their flock, spot a bird with a slightly fancier tail or a unique color, and only let those birds make babies. Humans were the ones doing the selecting. And the results were just, wow, dramatic. You go from the common ancestor on the left to this bizarre-looking pouter pigeon on the right. Just by picking out tiny variations and letting them add up, breeders created this incredible diversity in a few hundred years, which is just a blink of an eye in geological time. And they did this over and over, creating dozens of distinct breeds. Every unique trait, whether it's the feathered feet, the short beak, or the puffed-out chest, was just a small natural variation that a human breeder thought, hey, I like that, and then amplified it generation after generation. This is what led Darwin to his brilliant leap of logic. He asked himself, okay, if a human with a specific goal can cause this much change in just a few centuries, what kind of unimaginable change could a far more powerful, relentless force create over millions and millions of years? So that's the crucial question, right? If humans aren't the ones choosing out in the wild, then what is? Darwin realized that nature itself was the proving ground, and let me tell you, the test was brutal. He called this force the struggle for existence. It's a simple, harsh reality. Unlike a protected flock on a farm, in nature, way more individuals are born than the environment can possibly support. And that automatically leads to this fierce competition for everything, for food, for territory, for mates, just for the chance to survive. For any animal out in the wild, every single day is a life or death test. Can it find enough to eat? Can it avoid being eaten? Can it survive the heat or the cold? Can it outcompete its rivals? There's no safety net. And Darwin realized this whole struggle works because of two key ingredients you can see absolutely everywhere in nature. First, overproduction. Think of a bird's nest just full of chicks. Way more are born than will ever grow up. And second, variation. Just like no two of us are identical, no two of those chicks are either. Each one has its own slight random differences. So you take that desperate struggle for existence, and you add in all that natural random variation, and what do you get? You get Darwin's central mechanism. Nature itself becomes the selector. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. With artificial selection, the selector is a human, right? The goal is to get traits we like, and the timescale is generations. But with natural selection, the selector is the entire environment. There's no conscious goal. It's just raw survival and reproduction. And the timescale? It isn't just generations, it's eons. So here it is, the big idea. Natural selection. It's a process where any organism that happens to be born with some random, tiny variation that gives it a slight edge in that struggle, well, it's more likely to live long enough to have kids and pass that helpful trait on.
It's not about being the strongest. It's about being the best fit.
And you can see what this means in the real world. A bird born with a beak that's just slightly better shaped for cracking the local seeds is going to eat better. A predator with claws that are a tiny bit sharper might be a more successful hunter. These small advantages, when they compound over generations, they can literally mean the difference between life and death. Now, let this slow, grinding process of selection run for an immense stretch of time, and those tiny changes start to accumulate into massive ones. The evidence for this deep time, Darwin argued, was written right there in the rocks, in the fossil record, which showed how life had gradually transformed over millions of years. So, what is the ultimate kind of mind-bending result of this slow, patient process playing out over all of Earth's history? Well, this is where Darwin's theory went from just brilliant to truly revolutionary. The logic just flows perfectly. 1. Small changes add up over vast amounts of time. 2. New species start to branch off from their common ancestors. And 3. If that happens over and over again for billions of years, then all life must be connected in a single branching family tree. And that brings us right back to this amazing cover. The theory of natural selection implies that every living thing shares a common ancestor if you go back far enough. That fish, that elephant, that butterfly, and yes, us. We're all distant cousins, all just twigs on one single magnificent tree of life. It's an idea that started with simple observations of pigeons, but its conclusion was powerful enough to completely reframe humanity's place in the universe. We weren't separate from nature. We were an inextricable part of it. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. If Darwin was right, and we are all part of one grand unfolding story, what does our shared ancestry mean for how we treat each other and all the other life on our planet today?